Hey Mary, I'm glad you enjoyed Brian's talk. Um, and I figured I'd just read something out of Gebser really fast. The task which the new mutation poses for us can be resolved only if we supersede the purely mental, spatial world of systemic thought. We achieve this by recognizing the validity of psi stasis and moving the efficacy of the non-categorical elements into the sphere of perceptibility. Psi stasis is the means whereby we are able to open up our consolidated spatial consciousness to the integrating consciousness of the whole. This integrating consciousness enables us to perceive and presentiate the integrity or the integrality of the whole. So systasis is this word that Gebser is coining. It means the conjoining or fitting together of parts into integrality. So it's seeing the whole instead of the pieces. That is the task of the new mutation, the integral mutation. And to recognize the whole, it's recognizing purpose, it's recognizing meaning, value, truth, goodness, beauty. I was thinking right before I made this video that to be a human being, first and foremost, means to realize that things can go wrong. There can be evil, there can be stupidity, idiocy. These are real possibilities for human beings. For the rest of nature, they don't really seem to be. Nature seems to take care of itself pretty well. I mean, human beings are the dust on the surface of this, multi-billion-year process that's been growing beautifully. I can't believe what it's done in, relatively speaking, so little time. And the thing about time is, on a cosmic scale, it's still beginning and it already ended. If you're going to talk about the universe is growing, right? It's not this static, fixed place. The universe is a process of becoming, of evolution. And so time is, it's this whole process of birth and death. Time is a life, not an infinite extension on a number line. Eternity is infinite. Time is always changing. But it's a moving image of eternity, because the universe as a whole is eternal. It's turning forever. It's an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. The universe is a creature which gives birth to and swallows itself, all in one motion. That's the whole. That's being able to not just see systems in the world, separate substances, separate entities which have no intrinsic relation to the other. That's what systemic thinking does. It breaks everything down into categories. Systatic thinking, in the way Gebser is using that term, means to recognize not only those individual entities as wholes in themselves, but also the wholes which they are a part of, and the wholes which those wholes are a part of, but never settling for any part or whole in particular. Because you see the internal or essential relationship between all the parts, and no part exists but in relationship to other parts. Um, I also wanted to read a little bit of Carl Jung's letters about nature. It's called "The Earth Has a Soul," and he says, "Natural life is the nourishing soil of the soul. Anyone who fails to go along with life remains suspended, stiff and rigid in midair. That is why so many people get wooden in old age. They look back and cling to the past with a secret fear of death in their hearts. They withdraw from the life process, at least psychologically, and consequently remain fixed like nostalgic pillars of salt, with vivid recollections of youth but no living relation to the present. Our relative longevity, substantiated by present-day statistics, is a product of civilization. It is quite exceptional for primitive people to reach old age. For instance, when I visited the primitive tribes of East Africa, I saw very few men with white hair who might have been over 60. But they were really old. They seemed to have always been old. So fully had they assimilated their age. They were exactly what they were. They were exactly what they were in every respect. They were exactly what they were in every respect. We are forever only more or less than we actually are. It is as if our consciousness had somehow slipped from its natural foundations and no longer knew how to get along on nature's timing. It seems as though we were suffering from a hubris of consciousness which fools us into believing that one's time of life is a mere illusion which can be altered according to one's desire. One asks oneself where our consciousness gets its ability to be so contrary to nature, and what such arbitrariness might signify. So how is it that human beings know that something can go wrong? Why is it that we distinctly feel that evil is a possibility, whereas nature knows no morals? That seems to be what defines a human being, is this sense of guilt or of sin. Human consciousness somehow fractured nature, or totally divorced and disconnected itself from, the natural becoming. Or maybe not. Maybe this is just something that has happened before in the unfolding of our universe. There have been extinction events 5 times before the current mass extinction which is occurring on this planet. And the human beings are just the latest agent of that creative disaster. But there is always the creative aspect of every disaster. I mean, that's why mammals were able to become primates, and primates humans, because the dinosaurs were killed off by an asteroid. And somehow, in the wake of human beings, I'm pretty sure there'll be, a flowering unlike any the Earth has ever seen in its 4.5 billion year history. I'll finish off with another section of this excerpt from one of Jung's letters. Perhaps I may be allowed a comparison. It is as though we had to describe and explain a building whose upper story was erected in the 19th century. The ground floor dates back to the 16th century, and careful examination of the masonry reveals that it was reconstructed from a tower built in the 11th century. In the cellar we come upon Roman foundations, and under the cellar a choked-up cave with Neolithic tools in the upper layer, and remnants of fauna from the same period in the lower levels. That would be the picture of our psychic structure. We live on the upper story and are only aware that the lower story is slightly old-fashioned. As to what lies beneath the Earth's surface, of that we remain totally unconscious. This is a lame analogy, like all analogies, for in the psyche there is nothing that is just a dead relic. Everything is alive, and our upper story consciousness is continually influenced by its living and active foundations. Like the building, it is sustained and supported by them, and just as the building rises freely above the earth, so our consciousness stands as if above the earth in space, with a wide prospect before it. But the deeper we descend into the house, the narrower the horizon becomes, and the more we find ourselves in the darkness, till finally we reach the naked bedrock, and with that prehistoric time when reindeer hunters fought for a bare and wretched existence against the elemental forces of wild nature. The men of that age were still in full possession of their animal instincts, without which life would have been impossible. The free sway of instinct is not compatible with a strongly developed consciousness. The consciousness of primitive man, like that of the child, is sporadic, and his world, like the child's, is very limited. Indeed, in accordance with phylogenetic law, we still recapitulate in childhood reminiscences of the prehistory of the race and of mankind in general. Phylogenetically as well as ontogenetically, we have grown up out of the dark confines of the earth. Hence the factors that affected us most closely became archetypes, and it is these primordial images which influence us most directly, and therefore seem to be the most powerful.